Welcome to the Playing Books podcast. Today, we're embarking on a really foundational exploration. We're diving into the very bedrock of American liberty and governance.
That's right. We're looking at the Constitution of the United States
Yeah.
and the Declaration of Independence by delegates of the Constitutional Convention.
Exactly. And these, they aren't just dusty old historical texts. They're living blueprints. They've shaped, defined, and honestly, they continue to empower every American citizen.
They really do.
So our mission today is basically to uncover those enduring insights, that profound legacy that's packed within these documents.
Yeah.
We want to offer you a shortcut, to being truly well-informed about the principles that make the United States unique. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how these two documents really tell a complete story together. You've got the birth of an ideal and then, right after, the forging of a nation.
Yeah, like two acts of a play.
Exactly. The Declaration of Independence at 1776, right?
Yeah.
It laid out the philosophical ideals that just sparked a revolution. It's the why of it all.
The big vision.
Mm-hmm. And then, just 11 years later, you get the Constitution, drafted in 1787. That provides the structural blueprint. It's the how. How do we build a stable, enduring government based on those ideals?
A practical plan.
Precisely. And together, they just powerfully showcase the remarkable, prescience and prudence of the Founding Fathers.
Yeah.
They were looking ahead.
They really had foresight.
Absolutely. They didn't just establish a nation, they actually anticipated future challenges. And they built in mechanisms for adaptation, all designed really to foster and empower American citizens through these core principles.
It's incredible when you think about it.
It is. I mean, consider the monumental tasks they faced.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about declaring independence. They had to invent a whole new form of self-governance, one that could actually stand the test of time.
And inventing something like that from scratch.
Right.
No easy feat.
So when we delve into that invention, we absolutely have to start with the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's the philosophical starting point.
It is. And it's way more than just a formal breakup letter with King George III, though it is that too.
Yes, it definitely serves that purpose.
But it's the blueprint for a really radical new nation, and this is where it gets, I think, incredibly profound. The Declaration articulates these revolutionary ideas, and with such clarity, such power, that it just ignited a worldwide movement.
It really did resonate globally.
Those opening words of the preamble, they're still electrifying today, aren't they? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Chills. Still gives you chills.
It does.
And we really connect this to the bigger picture. These weren't just, abstract philosophical musings floating around. They formed the actual moral and philosophical foundation for what it means to be an American citizen. It shifted the entire paradigm of governance.
How so, specifically?
Well, historically, rights were often seen as, privileges, things granted by a monarch or some ruling power.
Given to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the Declaration asserts self-evident truths. Ideas so fundamental they don't even need proof, and unalienable rights that come from a creator, not from any king or government.
So inherent, not granted.
Precisely. That was a radical departure, a total conceptual earthquake, really. It fundamentally redefined people from subjects who were just sort of beholden to a ruler into citizens who possessed inherent God-given rights.
Imagine the shift in mindset that must have created.
Oh, huge. The empowerment that concept immediately instilled must have been incredible. And it didn't stop there.
Right. There's more.
Yeah, the Declaration went further. It established that groundbreaking principle that governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
So power comes from the people, popular sovereignty.
That's it. The will of the people is the ultimate source of legitimacy for any government. And then, maybe the most daring part.
Go on.
It articulated the right of the people to alter or to abolish any government that becomes destructive of these fundamental ends, and then to institute new government.
The right to revolution, essentially.
Yes, but even there, they showed incredible wisdom and caution. They tempered that right, acknowledging that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes.
So not something to be done lightly. Prudence again.
Exactly. They understood the dangers of constant upheaval. As Thomas Jefferson himself put it later in 1819, the Declaration was the declaratory charter of our rights and of the rights of man.
A charter for humanity, almost.
And Alexander Hamilton, writing even earlier, 1775, he just perfectly captured its spirit. He said, "The sacred rights of mankind are not to be rummaged for, among old parchments or musty records.
I love that quote.
Me too. He continues, they are written as with a sunbeam in the whole volume of human nature by the hand of the divinity itself, and can never be erased or obscured by mortal power.
Wow. That really underscores the deep philosophical roots, doesn't it? And the enduring power of this whole American experiment.
Absolutely. It sets the entire moral compass.
That's a powerful framing. And it's essential, I think, to remember it wasn't just about complaining about the king, but about this profound redefinition of humanity's relationship with government.
Right. Foundational principles first.
But to really grasp the Declaration's impact, we also need to look at the painstaking detail with which the founders built their case against the king. So how did they translate these really radical ideals into a compelling justification for war?
Well, they got specific. Very specific.
They did. The Declaration meticulously lists a long train of abuses and usurpations by King George III. It states plainly that these actions show a design to reduce them under absolute despotism.
They weren't just venting.
No, not at all. They were creating, essentially, a legalistic indictment, showing incredible prudence, again, in laying out their rationale for the entire world to scrutinize.
Building their case, piece by piece.
Exactly. And some of the examples from that list are just striking. Consider this. The king has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good.
So, actively stopping good laws from happening.
Right. Imagine a government deliberately thwarting its people's well-being just by saying no to beneficial legislation. And then he also has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless he approved them first, and then he just ignored them.
Legislative gridlock by design. Designed to suppress colonial self-governance.
Yes. And then there was his obstruction of justice, making judges dependent on his will alone for their jobs and salaries, and refusing to establish proper judiciary powers.
Undermining the rule of law itself, a core principle of liberty.
Absolutely. And beyond those, you have the big ones people remember, like imposing taxes on us without our consent.
The classic, no taxation without representation.
That's the one. And the practice of depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury. These were direct attacks on fundamental rights they believed they had as Englishmen.
Rights they felt were being trampled.
And then it gets even more visceral, right? The acts of violence. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people.
Real, tangible harm.
Definitely. And culminating in transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries, Hessians mostly, and even trying to incite domestic insurrections amongst us, meaning slave revolts, and using Native Americans against the colonists.
Chilling stuff.
It really is. This isn't just a laundry list. It's a dramatic narrative of escalating oppression. It paints a picture where there was really no alternative left but revolution.
And this list, in all its meticulous detail, it served as more than just a complaint, didn't it? It became a kind of powerful blueprint for the kind of government they wouldn't create.
Ah, that's a great point. The negative image.
Exactly. Each abuse they listed directly violated those unalienable rights we talked about earlier. Denying representation, obstructing justice, imposing taxes, keeping standing armies. These were all direct assaults on the colonists' life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Connecting the grievances back to the core principles.
Yes. By cataloging them so thoroughly, the founders weren't just justifying rebellion. They were implicitly laying the groundwork for the constitutional principles that would prevent such tyranny in the future. They were saying, here's what a government shouldn't do.
Paving the way for a system built on consent, checks, and balances.
And the explicit protection of individual liberties.
Exactly.
The sheer depth of this indictment underscores why they felt action was necessary, but it also highlights their foresight in identifying the key elements of good governance by pointing out the bad.
And all of that detailed forensic accounting of abuses, it led directly to the Declaration's climax, the moment of, well, profound commitment.
The point of no return.
Precisely. After laying out the philosophy and the exhaustive list of grievances, the Declaration makes its boldest statement. It says, "We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare."
Here it comes.
That these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved.
That's it. The definitive break.
No ambiguity there. Imagine the immense courage, the unity required for that kind of declaration, especially when you consider the pledge that followed.
The closing lines.
Yeah. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. They were putting everything on the line.
Everything. This was basically a collective death warrant if the revolution failed. Signed by prominent men like John Hancock, Charles Thompson, and representatives from all 13 colonies, now states.
What's so crucial here, I think, is that this profound act of independence, it immediately created this pressing need for a new framework for governance that led directly to the Constitution.
Connecting the dots.
Yeah. The Declaration stated the why they were breaking away, what ideals they stood for. The Constitution, then, would articulate the how. How would these ideals actually be put into practice through a functioning, stable, and hopefully lasting government?
From ideals to reality.
And that mutual pledge of lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, it wasn't just, flowery language. It was a testament to the immense stakes involved and the collective conviction that a new self-governing entity wasn't just desirable, it was absolutely necessary.
It sealed their commitment.
Absolutely. This act of declaration decisively set the trajectory for the United States as a distinct, self-governing nation. But it also immediately highlighted the immense challenge ahead. How do you build a lasting system out of revolutionary fervor?
That's a perfect pivot, because declaring independence is one thing, but actually building a lasting government from scratch, that's a whole different challenge.
A much harder challenge, arguably.
And their first attempt, the Articles of Confederation, well, it proved insufficient, didn't it?
It had serious weaknesses.
Which brings us neatly to Section 2, the Constitutional Convention, where they forged an entirely new government. The convention formally kicked off on May 25, 1787, right there in Philadelphia.
Same place as the Declaration, Independence Hall.
That's right. Now, technically, the delegates initially gathered to revise the Articles of Confederation, but it pretty quickly became clear that a complete overhaul was needed.
Patching it up wasn't going to cut it.
No. All states except Rhode Island sent delegates, which really underscores how widespread the recognition was that the existing government framework just wasn't working.
They knew something fundamental had to change.
And after a marathon of intense debate, compromises, often in the middle of a stifling summer heat, dealing with profound disagreements.
Can you imagine the pressure in that room?
Intense. But they finally adjourned on September 17, 1787, with 39 delegates putting their names to the new Constitution.
And if we zoom out to the bigger picture again, that shift from just revising the articles to drafting an entirely new document that was a testament to the founders' incredible long-term vision. They were thinking about stability, about prosperity down the road.
Beyond the immediate crisis.
Exactly. The articles had created this, loose league of states. The central government was really weak. It couldn't effectively collect taxes, couldn't regulate commerce between the states, couldn't even enforce its own laws properly.
Which led to instability, economic problems.
Big time. Post-revolution, things were shaky. So the delegates' foresight, their good judgment in recognizing these fundamental flaws and choosing to create something entirely new instead of just tinkering, it speaks volumes about their commitment to a truly lasting union.
They learned from their mistakes, essentially.
They did. George Washington, reflecting on this new creation a few years later in 1796, put it powerfully. He said, "The basis of our political systems is the right of the people to make and to alter their constitutions of government."
Echoing the Declaration again.
Right. But then he adds, "But the Constitution, which at any time exists, till changed by an explicit and authentic act of the whole people, is sacredly obligatory upon all."
So both the right to change and the need for stability once established. Prudence and power.
Beautifully put. It highlights both that revolutionary spirit of popular sovereignty and the wisdom of establishing a stable, binding framework that required really broad consensus to change. The pressure on those delegates to design a government that could both protect liberty and ensure national unity, it just can't be overstated.
And that pressure, those grand intentions, they're immediately clear right in the preamble to the Constitution. It's not just some flowery introduction. It's a really powerful statement of the core purpose, the fundamental objectives of this whole new government.
Sets the tone for everything that follows.
Absolutely. Let's really unpack the spirit and objectives packed into that powerful opening statement. It starts, "We, the people of the United States."
Bam. Right there. Huge.
Huge. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Every phrase is loaded with meaning.
Completely. We the people that immediately signals this radical departure from kings and inherited power. It emphasizes that sovereignty, the ultimate authority, rests with the citizens themselves. That's a direct empowerment of the people, echoing the Declaration.
The government serves the people, not the other way around.
Exactly. And each clause that follows addresses a specific historical need or an intended outcome to form a more perfect union. Well, that's a direct response to the failures of the Articles of Confederation, right? Aiming for a stronger, more cohesive nation.
Fixing what was broken.
Establish justice, promising a fair legal system, a clear contrast to the arbitrary justice under British rule they complained about. Ensure domestic tranquility, that speaks to the unrest, the disunity they'd seen under the Articles, like Shays' Rebellion. Promising internal peace.
Stability was key.
Provide for the common defense, recognizing the need for a unified military against foreign threats, another big weakness of the Articles. Promote the general welfare, outlining a government that's responsible for the overall well-being of its citizens, not just a select few.
A broader purpose.
And finally, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That ties right back to the Declaration's unalienable rights, making sure freedom wasn't just for them, but for future generations too.
Yeah.
It's just a breathtaking statement of intent, a vision for the ages.
It really is. And this raises an important question. How did these grand, almost aspirational purposes translate into the specific, intricate design of the three branches of government we see laid out in the articles that follow?
Yeah, how do you get from the vision to the nuts and bolts?
Well, these goals directly reflect the hard lessons they learned. Lessons from the grievances against Britain, lessons from the shortcomings of the articles. For instance, that call in the preamble to establish justice. That leads directly to Article 3 and the creation of an independent judiciary.
Makes sense.
Similarly, ensure domestic tranquility and provide for the common defense. Those absolutely necessitated a stronger executive branch, Article 2, and the power of Congress, Article 1, to raise armies and call forth the militia.
So the structure flows directly from the purpose.
Exactly. The entire preamble isn't just rhetoric. It showcases incredible wisdom and foresight in nation building. It directly informs the structural choices they made. James Madison, looking back in 1829, kind of summed it up. The happy union of these states is a wonder, their constitution a miracle, their example the hope of liberty throughout the world.
High praise from the father of the Constitution.
Indeed. This profound opening really sets the stage perfectly for the ingenious architecture that follows.
Okay, so with those grand purposes clearly stated, the Constitution then dives right into the practical structure of this new government. And it starts, logically, with the legislative branch, Congress.
Article 1, the longest article by far.
And this is where the founders' meticulous design for representation and lawmaking truly shines. Article 1 kicks off by declaring that all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States.
All legislative powers herein granted. Important phrase implies limits.
Good point. Which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. So right away, they establish a bicameral system, 2 houses.
A key innovation.
And a key check and balance, right?
Yeah.
Within the legislative process itself. A very prudent move to slow things down, ensure deliberation.
Prevents rash decisions by one single body.
Let's look at the 2 houses. First, the House of Representatives detailed in Section 2. This is designed to be the body most directly accountable to the people. Members are chosen every 2nd year by the people of the several states.
Short leash. Frequent elections.
Exactly. Makes them truly representative, or at least intended to be. To serve, you have to be at least 25, a citizen for 7 years, and live in the state you represent.
Basic qualifications.
Crucially, the House holds the sole power of impeachment. They act like a grand jury for the nation, bringing charges against federal officials.
The accusation part.
Right. And all bills for raising revenue tax bills have to originate in the House. This puts the power of the purse directly in the hands of the most directly elected body.
Another important check. No taxation without representation, essentially.
Then you have the Senate, laid out in Section 3. Each state gets 2 senators, regardless of population, serving 6-year terms.
Longer terms, providing more stability, insulation from immediate public passions.
That was the idea. And originally, remember, they were chosen by the state legislatures, not the people directly. That changed later with the 17th Amendment, which made it direct popular election, another step in democratization over time.
Evolution within the framework.
Senators have to be a bit older, 30 a citizen for 9 years, and an inhabitant of their state. The vice president presides over the Senate, but only gets a vote if there's a tie.
The tiebreaker role.
And the Senate has the sole power to try all impeachments. They act as the court in impeachment cases, requiring a hefty two-thirds vote for conviction and removal from office.
A high bar, ensuring it's not purely political.
Now, Section 8. This is where Congress's powers get really detailed, an extensive list reflecting what the founders thought a national government needed to actually do, things the articles couldn't handle.
The enumerated powers.
Exactly. They gave Congress the power to lay and collect taxes, crucially, to borrow money and to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states.
A Commerce Clause. Hugely important, hugely debated ever since.
Oh, absolutely. The power to tax and regulate commerce was critical for forging a single, unified economy out of those 13 fragmented states.
Essential for national survival.
Congress can also establish post offices and post roads, to declare war, raise and support armies, and to provide and maintain a navy, all vital for national security, communication, cohesion.
Basic functions of a sovereign nation.
And then there's the famous, or infamous, depending on your view, elastic clause at the end of Section 8, the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers.
Ah, yes, the necessary and proper clause.
It's a brilliant example of foresight, really. It allows the Constitution to adapt, to stretch, to meet unforeseen circumstances and evolving national needs without needing a formal amendment every time something new comes up.
But also a source of endless debate about the scope of federal power.
True. But the founders were equally prudent, maybe even more so, in limiting these powers. That's what Section 9 is largely about. For example, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended.
Unless in times of rebellion or invasion. A crucial safeguard.
Critical. Habeas corpus, for anyone unfamiliar, is that legal right, meaning you can't just be locked up indefinitely without being charged and brought before a court. It's a fundamental protection against arbitrary detention, one of the abuses they hated under British rule.
Right. No disappearing into a dungeon.
The Constitution also explicitly bans Congress from passing any bill of attainder. That's a law declaring someone guilty without a trial, or any ex post facto law, a law that makes something a crime after it was done.
Core principles of fairness and predictability in law.
These explicit limitations, they were designed precisely to prevent the kinds of abuses the colonists had listed in the Declaration. It really distinguishes the U.S. system from those prior forms of governance.
What's genuinely striking here, I think, is how carefully the founders tried to balance these broad federal powers with very specific restraints. It wasn't accidental.
A deliberate design.
Absolutely. This was a direct attempt to prevent the very abuses they had just detailed against King George III. And that bicameral system you mentioned, two houses, different terms, different election methods, different core responsibilities, that acts as a crucial internal check. It ensures legislation gets debated thoroughly, hopefully representing diverse interests across the country.
Slows things down, makes it more deliberate.
And the direct election of representatives, and later, senators, that directly empowers the citizenry in forming the legislative body. This whole intricate design, with its specific list of powers and its clear list of limitations, it just demonstrates an extraordinary level of foresight. They were trying to prevent power from concentrating too much in one place and safeguard individual liberty.
It's a living testament, really, to their understanding that unchecked power inevitably leads to tyranny, and that's a powerful distinction of our form of government.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so from the extensive, often slow-moving, deliberative powers of Congress, we shift to the more focused, often decisive authority of the executive branch. Let's unpack the careful creation of this powerful, yet hopefully accountable, chief executive.
Article 2, the presidency.
Right. Article 2 states pretty unequivocally, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America, one person.
A single executive. A big departure from the committee-style leadership, or lack thereof, under the Articles.
Exactly. This single individual holds office for a 4-year term, along with a vice president chosen for the same term. It signals clear, unified national leadership.
Providing energy and direction for the government.
The method of election, laid out in Section 1, initially involved the Electoral College. Now, that's a complex system, we know, designed back then to balance direct democracy with state representation, maybe guard against pure majoritarianism, though it's been refined and debated ever since.
Still a hot topic today, the Electoral College.
Always. To be eligible for president, you have to be a natural-born citizen, at least 35 years old, and have been a resident within the U.S. for 14 years.
Barely standard qualifications.
But a cornerstone of the office, I think, is the president's oath of office. It's spelled right out. I do solemnly swear, or affirm, that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That last part is key: preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution.
Incredibly significant, isn't it? It underscores that the president's ultimate loyalty, their primary duty, is to the Constitution itself, not to a party, not to a faction, not to personal gain, but to the foundational law.
A powerful symbol of the rule of law.
Then, Section 2 outlines the president's extensive powers and duties. They are the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States.
Establishing that vital principle of civilian control over the military. Hugely important.
Absolutely. A deliberate choice to prevent military figures from taking over the government, distinguishing the U.S. from many other nations then and now. The president also has the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment.
A check on the judicial branch, a sort of safety valve.
Crucially, the president has the power to make treaties, but, and this is a big but only buy-in with the advice and consent of the Senate, and it requires a 2/3 vote of the senators present.
A significant check on foreign policy power, shared power.
Very much so. Similarly, the president nominates ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States. But again, these appointments require the advice and consent of the Senate, usually a simple majority.
Another check prevents the president from just stacking the government and courts with cronies without legislative buy-in.
Right. These requirements ensure that a single person can't wield totally unchecked power, and that critical decisions hopefully reflect a broader consensus.
Built-in friction. By design.
Section 3 adds other duties, like giving Congress information of the State of the Union periodically and recommending measures he thinks are necessary. That highlights the president's role in setting the national agenda, proposing legislation.
The bully pulpit, as they say.
And the president also has the critical responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, making sure the government actually functions and enforces the laws passed by Congress.
The core executive function.
And finally, Section 4 details the ultimate check, impeachment. It allows for the removal of the president, vice president, and other civil officers for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
Ensuring that even the highest office holder is accountable under the law. No one is above the Constitution.
That's the principle, anyway.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the president's dual role, being both the symbolic head of state and the practical head of government, provides both unity and leadership. That was crucial for a young republic trying to find its footing on the world stage.
Yeah, one voice internationally, one leader nationally.
And that civilian control over the military we mentioned, that was a really key principle distinguishing the U.S. It was a deliberate rejection of European models, where military power often overshadowed civilian authority. The founders, they really sought this delicate balance. They wanted an executive strong enough to act decisively, unlike the weak system under the Articles.
Which couldn't get much done.
Right. But they also wanted that executive carefully constrained by checks from Congress and the courts. This balance truly reflects their foresight and their prudent desire to guard against the monarchical tendencies they just fought a revolution to escape, while still creating effective national leadership.
A tightrope walk, really. Powerful, but not too powerful.
Exactly.
Okay, so that completes the remarkable trifecta of governmental power. We've covered the legislative and the executive. Now we turn to the third pillar, the judicial branch. So what does this all mean for ensuring justice and interpreting this supreme law of the land?
Article 3. Shorter than I and 2, but hugely significant.
It lays out the framework for the judiciary, starting with, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish.
So one Supreme Court is mandated, but Congress gets to create the lower federal courts. Flexibility there.
Right. This structure created an independent branch of government, deliberately separate from Congress and the president. And to ensure their impartiality, their independence, judges, both Supreme Court justices and lower federal judges, shall hold their offices during good behavior.
Which essentially means for life unless they're impeached and removed.
Correct, and they receive compensation that shall not be diminished during their continuance in office.
Protecting them from political pressure or financial coercion from the other branches. A vital safeguard for the rule of law.
It really is. A key distinction from systems where judges serve at the pleasure of the ruler. Section 2 then outlines the broad scope of this judicial power. It extends to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made.
Basically, any case involving federal law, the Constitution, or national treaties.
Yes, and it includes cases affecting ambassadors, maritime issues, and crucially controversies where the U.S. government is a party, or disputes between states or between citizens of different states.
A wide jurisdiction to ensure national laws are applied consistently.
While the Supreme Court is granted original jurisdiction in a few specific types of cases, like those involving ambassadors or when the state is a party, its main role is exercising appellate jurisdiction.
Meaning it mostly hears appeals, reviews decisions made by lower courts. It's a court of last resort.
Exactly. Now, a critical protection for individual liberty right there in Article 3 is the requirement that the trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury.
A fundamental right, echoing the complaints against the king denying jury trials.
Directly. And the trial has to be held in the state where the crime was committed, ensuring local accountability and community participation in the justice system.
Prevents hauling defendants off to distant, hostile locations.
Finally, Section 3 takes on the very serious crime of treason. It's defined very clearly, very narrowly, not left open to political manipulation. Treason shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort.
Only those two things. A very specific definition to prevent its abuse.
And to prevent abuse further, conviction requires incredibly strict proof. On the testimony of two witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court.
Can't just convict someone of treason on flimsy evidence or rumor.
Right, and furthermore, while Congress can declare the punishment for treason, no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted.
Meaning the punishment dies with the traitor. It doesn't extend to punish their innocent family or heirs by taking away their property or rights forever.
Which was a common practice back then. This was a remarkably humane and prudent limitation compared to historical norms, where entire families could be ruined for generations by one person's alleged treason.
What's truly illuminating here, I think, is the founders' foresight in establishing a judicial system that could actually interpret the law and the Constitution itself. This provides stability and acts as that critical check on the other two branches.
The concept of judicial review wasn't explicit yet, but the seeds were there.
Exactly. The independence of the judiciary, protected by life, tenure, and stable salary, was revolutionary for its time and absolutely vital for ensuring that the Constitution truly remained the supreme law of the land, not just fancy words on a parchment.
Making the whole system work in practice.
And that careful, narrow definition of treason. It actively prevents the crime from being easily abused as a political weapon. A really wise move, considering how often accusations of treason had been used throughout history to crush dissent and consolidate power. This independent judiciary, therefore, empowers citizens by ensuring a fair application of the law and upholding their rights against potential government overreach. It's a defining characteristic of the U.S. system, this deep commitment to impartial justice.
Okay, so we've explored the grand ideals in the Declaration and then the brilliant architecture of the first three articles of the Constitution: Congress, President, courts. But what about the states? How do these individual semi-sovereign entities fit together and function cohesively within this new federal system?
Article 4. Crucial for making the United States actually mean something.
It really is. Article 4 is all about interstate relations. Ensuring harmony, ensuring cooperation. Another truly prudent move to try and unite these often quarrelsome, disparate states.
Prevent the chaos they saw under the articles.
Precisely. Section 1 contains the famous full faith and credit clause. It mandates that full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state.
Meaning, states have to respect each other's laws and court decisions generally.
Right. So, for example, a marriage legally performed in Nevada is recognized in New York, Or a court judgment issued in Florida is generally enforceable in California. This prevents legal chaos and encourages a unified legal landscape across the nation. It makes United States more than just a geographical label.
Smooths interaction between the states.
Then Section 2 has the Privileges and Immunities Clause, also really important. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states.
Basically, no discrimination against citizens from other states regarding fundamental rights.
Exactly. When you travel or move to another state, you can't be treated like a foreigner. You generally get the same basic rights, like owning property, using the courts as that state's own citizens. Section 2 also covers extradition. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime who shall flee from justice shall on demand be delivered up to the state where the crime occurred.
Prevents states from becoming safe havens for criminals fleeing justice. Ensures cooperation.
Right. Now, the original document also had a clause here about persons held to service or labor, the Fugitive Slave Clause, which was a terrible compromise, but thankfully later nullified by the 13th Amendment.
A necessary correction later on.
Section 3 deals with admitting new states into the Union. It gives Congress the power to do that, but also sets limits, like you can't carve a new state out of an existing one without that state's legislature consenting, along with Congress.
Planning for westward expansion and growth. Very forward-thinking.
And finally, Section 4 provides a crucial guarantee. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government.
Meaning no state can become a monarchy or dictatorship. Has to maintain representative democracy.
Exactly. And the federal government also pledges to protect each state against invasion and, if requested by the state legislature or governor, against domestic violence or insurrection.
Providing both internal and external security for the states within the federal system.
So all these clauses together, they really lay the foundation for how the states interact.
And this raises an important question. How do these provisions really cement the idea of a unified nation, while still respecting the sovereignty, the unique identities of the individual states?
It's a balancing act, isn't it?
It truly is. The founders' wisdom in creating these mechanisms was just paramount. They had acutely experienced the disunity, the constant bickering and competition among the states under the Articles of Confederation. These clauses were expressly designed to prevent a return to that chaos.
Learning from failure again.
Absolutely. They recognized that while states had their own distinct identities, their own laws for the Union to actually succeed, there had to be fundamental agreements on how they'd interact, how they'd recognize each other's legal frameworks, how citizens would be treated across state lines. This article is a masterful balancing act between state autonomy and federal cohesion. It empowers states to govern themselves locally while firmly binding them into a larger functional union.
That balance, that tension maybe, between stability and the capacity for change, that's captured brilliantly in the next part, Article 5.
The amendment process. Possibly the most ingenious part of the whole document.
I agree. Let's unpack perhaps the most brilliant and, well, prescient aspect of the Constitution. Its built-in capacity for growth and adaptation. Article V outlines how the Constitution itself can be amended. This ensures that this foundational document isn't some rigid, unchangeable relic from the 18th century.
Set in stone forever.
Right, but instead, it's a living instrument capable of evolving along with the nation it governs.
So how does it work?
Well, amendments can be proposed in two ways, either by a two-thirds vote of both houses of Congress.
Which is how all amendments so far have been proposed.
Right. Or, interestingly, by a national convention called for by two-thirds of the state legislatures. That second method has never actually been used to propose an amendment.
A safety valve, perhaps, if Congress becomes unresponsive.
Could be. Now, once an amendment is proposed, it has to be ratified, approved. And that requires approval from 3/4 of the state legislatures, or are by conventions held in 3/4 of the states. Congress gets to decide which ratification method is used for each amendment.
3/4. That's a really high bar.
It is 38 out of 50 states today. This process is deliberately difficult. It requires really broad consensus across the country, across both federal and state levels.
And that difficulty is a feature, not a bug.
Right, absolutely. It's a testament to the founders' incredible prudence. They wanted to ensure the Constitution could adapt to future challenges and changing societal needs, but they didn't want it subject to, fleeting passions or temporary political whims.
Prevents constant tinkering with the fundamental law. Ensures stability.
Exactly. It requires significant deliberation, broad support, but it does allow for necessary evolution. This mechanism is what truly makes the Constitution a living document, capable of addressing profound future challenges like abolishing slavery, granting women suffrage without requiring another revolution.
It allows for peaceful change over time.
As Chief Justice John Marshall noted back in 1821, the people made the Constitution, and the people can unmake it. It is the creature of their own will and lives only by their will. This flexibility, built right into the document's core, is arguably one of its most genius and enduring features.
What's truly remarkable here, I think, is that the founders, they understood they couldn't possibly foresee every future contingency. They knew society would change in ways they couldn't imagine.
Humility, almost.
Yes. So they built in the flexibility to correct, to expand, to refine their own work. This amendment process, it directly empowers future generations of citizens to shape their government. It demonstrates an unparalleled level of trust in the concept of self-governance over time.
They weren't just writing rules for their generation.
Yeah. No, they were creating a government for the ages, with a built-in mechanism for its own improvement and adaptation. This foresight is just a cornerstone of the Constitution's enduring relevance. And it really distinguishes the U.S. from many other nations whose founding documents might have proved too rigid and broke under pressure. It allows the nation to grow and change while holding on to its core principles.
Building on that idea of a robust, adaptable framework, Article 6 then clarifies the hierarchy of laws and the commitment expected from public servants.
Yeah, this is where the concept of federal supremacy really gets cemented.
Its core statement, the Supremacy Clause, declares that this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land.
That's the linchpin.
It absolutely is. It means that if there's a conflict between a federal law that's consistent with the Constitution and a state law, the federal law wins. It prevails.
Ensuring a coherent national legal system prevents states from just ignoring or undermining federal authority whenever they feel like it.
Right. Provides a clear framework for consistent governance across the whole nation. Furthermore, Article 6 mandates that the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution.
Everyone in government, federal and state, swears allegiance to the Constitution first.
That's huge. It underscores that the primary loyalty for all public servants at every level is to the Constitution itself, not to a state, not to a party, not to a person, but to the document. This pledge is a unique and powerful aspect of the American system, really distinguishing it from places where loyalty might be to a monarch or ruling party.
Reinforces the idea of a government of laws, not of men.
And perhaps most presciently for its time, Article 6 declares that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
Wow. Separation of church and state, right there in the main body.
Yeah, pretty radical for the 1780s.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that prohibition of religious tests for office, it was a truly radical departure for its time. It reflects the founders' profound commitment to individual liberty and, yes, the separation of church and state.
In an era where established churches and religious requirements for office were common.
Exactly. In many nations back then, you had to belong to the official state church to hold public office. This clause was incredibly forward-thinking. It was a prudent move that ensured public office would be open to all citizens who could faithfully uphold the Constitution, regardless of their personal religious beliefs. This further empowered a diverse citizenry.
It broadened the pool of potential public servants.
Absolutely. This clause, combined with the Supremacy Clause and that universal oath to the Constitution, it truly solidified the secular and constitutional nature of the American Republic, setting it apart from many other nations at the time.
Okay, finally, to wrap up the initial drafting and adoption story of the Constitution itself, we get to Article 7. This discusses how this monumental document actually became the law of the land.
The ratification process, how to go live.
Its core information is pretty straightforward. The ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same.
9 out of 13. A supermajority, but not unanimous.
Right. That was the practical mechanism they set up to put the new government into effect, avoiding the trap of requiring unanimous consent like the Articles of Confederation did, which had paralyzed it. The timeline here is important.
Let's hear it.
The Constitutional Convention approved the final draft, and 39 delegates signed it on September 17, 1787. Then, the ratification debates began in the states. On June 21, 1788, New Hampshire became the ninth state to ratify.
That was the magic number. The Constitution was officially effective, at least for those 9 states.
Exactly. That was the critical threshold. Just a few months later, on March 4, 1789, the first Congress under this new Constitution convened in New York City. And then, on April 30, 1789, George Washington was inaugurated as the first president.
The new government was up and running.
That marked the official birth of the U.S. government under its new and hopefully enduring framework.
And this raises an important question. What does that ratification process itself tell us about the ultimate source of authority in the American system?
What do you mean?
Well, the fact that the Constitution had to be ratified by special state conventions, bodies specifically chosen by the people in each state just for this purpose, rather than simply being approved by the existing state legislature.
Oh, yeah. That's significant.
It really is. It reinforced that principle of popular sovereignty we saw right in the preamble, we the people. It was a direct appeal to the people themselves through their elected delegates in these conventions to legitimize this new form of government.
Bypassing the potentially self-interested state governments in a way.
To some extent, yes. This process, demanding widespread popular approval through these special conventions, demonstrated the wisdom of the founders. They wanted to ensure the Constitution's foundation was deeply democratic, solidifying its moral and legal authority right from the outset. It underscores again how, in theory at least, the citizens are the ultimate source of power in the American system.
Okay, so the Constitution is ratified, the new government starts taking shape. But the story isn't over. The next crucial step, almost immediately, was securing individual liberties more explicitly. This leads us to the amendments.
And the first 10 are, of course, the Bill of Rights.
Exactly. So what does all this mean for the everyday citizen? Well, the Bill of Rights is truly about you. It's about safeguarding individual freedoms and really distinguishing the rights and empowerment of an American citizen. These were proposed by the first Congress on September 25, 1789, and ratified pretty quickly, becoming effective December 15, 1791.
Added largely due to pressure from the Anti-Federalists during the ratification debates, they wanted explicit protections.
That's right. They were added, as the preamble to the Bill of Rights says, to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers by the new federal government and to extend the ground of public confidence, basically to reassure people.
So let's break them down.
Let's group these vital protections to understand their impact. First, you've got the freedoms of expression and religion. That's Amendment this, foundational.
The big one. Speech, press, religion, assembly, petition.
Right. It guarantees freedom of religion, prohibiting government establishment, and protecting free exercise, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to peaceably assemble, and the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. These are just the absolute cornerstones of an open democratic society, essential for an empowered citizenry to hold its government accountable.
Can't have democracy without them.
Then you have protections related to security, in person, and property. That covers Amendments 7th year and 4.
Protecting your physical self and your stuff.
Pretty much. The Second Amendment secures the right of the people to keep and bear arms in the context of needing a well-regulated militia. The Third Amendment prevents the government from forcing citizens to quarter soldiers in their homes without consent, a direct response to a specific grievance against the British.
Doesn't come up much today, but it was a big deal then.
True. And the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. It requires warrants based on probable cause, supported by oath, and they have to particularly describe the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Huge protection for privacy. Limits government intrusion into your life and home.
Definitely. Then there's a whole cluster dealing with the rights of the accused and due process. That's Amendments V, 6, 7, and 8. These are the bulwarks of a fair legal system.
Making sure the government follows rules when trying to punish someone.
Exactly. The Fifth Amendment is packed. It guarantees a grand jury indictment for serious federal crimes, prevents double jeopardy, being tried twice for the same crime, protects against self-incrimination, that's pleading the Fifth, ensures due process of law before life, liberty, or property can be taken, and mandates just compensation if private property is taken for public use, eminent domain.
Cornerstones of fair legal process.
The Sixth Amendment ensures rights during a criminal trial. a speedy and public trial, an impartial jury, the right to be informed of the charges, to confront witnesses against you, to compel favorable witnesses to testify, and the right to assistance of counsel, a lawyer.
Absolutely essential for a fair fight in court.
The Seventh Amendment preserves the right to a jury trial in civil cases, common lawsuits, where the amount in controversy exceeds $20, which was more money back then, and the Eighth Amendment prohibits excessive bail, excessive fines, and cruel and unusual punishments.
Reflecting basic humanitarian limits on government power.
Finally, there are two crucial amendments dealing with unenumerated rights and limits on federal power. That's I, X, and X. These are really important for empowering citizens beyond just the listed specifics.
Sometimes overlooked, but critical.
The Ninth Amendment is a far-sighted safeguard. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Meaning, just because we listed some rights doesn't mean those are the only rights you have. Protects future interpretations of liberty.
Exactly. It acknowledges that citizens retain other fundamental rights beyond those explicitly written down. And the 10th Amendment reinforces federalism and the idea of limited government. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
If the Constitution doesn't give a power to the feds or deny it to the states, then it belongs to the states or the people. A check on federal overreach.
So that whole package, the Bill of Rights, fundamentally shapes the relationship between the government and the individual citizen.
What's truly illuminating here is that the Bill of Rights, even though it wasn't in the original 1787 document, it was such a prudent and necessary addition. It directly addressed the concerns about individual liberty that were raised so forcefully during the ratification debates.
It helped sell the Constitution, essentially.
It absolutely did. It cemented public trust in the new government by explicitly outlining these protections. And it serves as that direct line back to the Declaration's promise of unalienable rights, giving them concrete, legal, enforceable protection. It defines what it truly means to be an empowered American citizen protected from your government in crucial ways.
These aren't just suggestions, they're legally binding safeguards. They fundamentally shape daily life, our interactions with government, and they powerfully distinguish the U.S. commitment to individual freedom.
Absolutely, they're central to the American identity.
But the Constitution's evolution didn't stop with the Bill of Rights. Far from it. Some of the most profound changes came later, particularly after the Civil War. That period brought about a true national transformation, forcing the country to confront its original sin of slavery and significantly expanding civil rights.
The Reconstruction Amendments, monumental changes.
Absolutely. These amendments truly redefine who we the people actually included, and they showed how the Constitution could adapt, however painfully, to moral imperatives. First, you have Amendment the 13th, 1865.
Abolishing slavery.
Finally, a monumental change, stated simply. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. It finally brought a constitutional end to the institution that had contradicted the Declaration's ideals for almost a century.
A fundamental shift in American society and law.
Then came Amendment 13th, 1868. This is arguably one of the most impactful amendments in U.S. history. Its effects are still debated and felt today. Section 1 is key.
Tell us about Section 1.
It defines U.S. citizenship for the first time in the Constitution. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction are citizens. This crucially overturned the Dred Scott decision, which had denied citizenship to African American.
Establishing birthright citizenship.
Yes. And then, critically, it prohibited the states, this is aimed at the states, from making or enforcing any law which abridges the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. It also forbade states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or denying any person within their jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws.
The due process and equal protection clauses. Hugely important for civil rights litigation ever since.
Absolutely. These clauses fundamentally reshaped federalism and civil rights. They essentially began the process of applying the principles of the Bill of Rights, which originally only limited the federal government to the states as well.
A second founding, some have called it.
That's a good way to put it. Finally, in this cluster, you have Amendment XV, 1870. This directly addressed voting rights based on race.
What does it say?
It stated that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude.
A huge step towards universal male suffrage, at least on paper.
Right, a significant step aiming to secure the vote for black men. Though, sadly, its promise was undermined for decades by things like poll taxes and literacy tests, particularly in the South, until later court decisions and legislation like the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
The struggle for enforcement was long and hard.
It certainly was.
But if we connect this back to the bigger picture, these three amendments, 13, 14, and 15, they represent this profound constitutional effort to finally live up to the Declaration's ideal that all men are created equal.
Trying to bridge the gap between aspiration and reality.
Exactly. They fundamentally reshaped the definition of citizenship and equality. They addressed the nation's original sin of slavery and extended the promise of the Declaration to previously marginalized groups, primarily African Americans. They are just powerful examples of the Constitution's capacity for moral evolution, however incomplete or delayed the realization might have been. They show how the document, through that amendment process we talked about, can adapt to correct historical injustices and directly empower millions of newly recognized citizens with legal protections and rights. This period of constitutional change truly showed the document's potential to be a living, breathing instrument of justice.
And the Constitution's adaptability, its capacity to change and reflect the evolving nation, didn't stop there. As the country grew, as its values shifted, further amendments continued to expand democratic participation and refine the actual mechanisms of governance. It showcases the ongoing responsiveness, the prudence, really, of the American political system over time.
More evolution, more adaptation.
Consider the amendments that extended suffrage even further, or refined how we govern ourselves. Amendment 7th, 1913.
What did that do?
That changed how U.S. senators were chosen. Remember, they were originally picked by state legislatures.
Right. Indirect election.
The 17th Amendment shifted that to direct popular election by the people of each state, a significant increase in direct citizen power in the federal government, making the Senate more democratic.
Big change.
Then, Amendment 1919, 1920, a truly monumental step for equality. This amendment granted women the right to vote nationwide, finally recognizing half the adult population as full political participants.
Doubling the electorate. Huge expansion of we the people.
Absolutely. And much later, Amendment 1906 and 1971, this responded largely to the Vietnam War era, lowering the national voting age from 21 down to 18.
The whole old enough to fight, old enough to vote argument.
That was exactly the sentiment. It reflected a changing view of adulthood and responsibility.
So expanding who gets to vote. What about refining the government itself?
Good question. Other important refinements include Amendment Texas 2nd, 1951. This limited the president to 2 terms in office.
A reaction to Franklin D. Roosevelt's 4 terms. A prudent measure, perhaps, to prevent too much power concentrating in one individual for too long.
That was the thinking. Then Amendment 64th, 1964, prohibited the use of poll taxes in federal elections. This removed a significant barrier to voting, particularly for low-income citizens and racial minorities who were disproportionately affected by such taxes.
Making the right to vote more accessible in practice.
And Amendment X6V, 1967, established clear procedures for handling presidential disability, like if a president becomes incapacitated and for filling a vacancy in the vice presidency.
Ensuring continuity of leadership, stability, and unforeseen circumstances. Very practical.
Exactly. Each of these amendments, in its own way, represents a conscious decision by the American people through their representatives to broaden citizen empowerment, expand democracy, or refine the practical workings of their government.
And this raises an important question. How do these various amendments, spanning well over a century from the direct election of senators to the 18-year-old vote, how do they collectively illustrate the dynamic and evolving nature of we the people within that framework the founders created?
What's the takeaway there?
Well, each one of these amendments broadened citizen empowerment in some way. They moved the nation closer, step by step, sometimes haltingly, toward the ideals articulated back in the Declaration. They show this continuing effort through deliberate constitutional means to make the Union more perfect, as the preamble says. They ensure that the government remains accountable to an ever-expanding definition of its citizenry and adapted to the changing needs and values of the society it governs. This ongoing process of refinement, using the tools the founders gave us, is really a hallmark of American democracy and a testament to the founding document's enduring strength and flexibility.
Beyond those landmark changes in suffrage and structure, there have been other important adaptations, too. They demonstrate the Constitution's broad applicability and sometimes the surprising ingenuity of its framers or maybe later generations using the tools they provided. A quick look at other noteworthy amendments also underscores the practical, sometimes surprising ways the Constitution has adapted.
Like whales.
For instance, Amendment 11, 1795. This came very early. It limited the ability of individuals to sue states in federal court. It clarified an early jurisdictional issue that arose, basically protecting state sovereignty from certain kinds of lawsuits.
Fine-tuning federal-state relations.
Amendment 16, 1913. This one had a huge impact. It explicitly granted Congress the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived.
The federal income tax fundamentally altered how the federal government finances itself, allowing for its massive expansion in the 20th century.
Absolutely. Couldn't have modern government without it, arguably. Perhaps most interesting for demonstrating flexibility is the pair, Amendment 18th, 1919, and Amendment L's 1933.
Prohibition and its repeal.
Exactly. The 18th Amendment established nationwide prohibition of alcohol. It was a massive social experiment written into the Constitution, and then, finding it largely unworkable and causing more problems than it solved.
Like organized crime.
Right. The 21st Amendment completely repealed the 18th. This demonstrates the Constitution's remarkable capacity to actually correct major societal experiments through the same formal amendment process. You can undo things, too.
Proof that the amendment process works in both directions. Flexibility indeed.
And then there's one more I find fascinating. Amendment 67th, 1992. This states that any law increasing the pay of members of Congress cannot take effect until after the next election of representatives has occurred.
So they can't give themselves an immediate raise. Accountability to the voters first.
Right, but what's truly remarkable about this one, it was originally proposed by James Madison way back in 1789 as part of the original Bill of Rights.
No way! It took over 200 years to ratify.
Yes. It sat dormant for 2 centuries until a renewed push in the late 20th century finally got it over the ratification threshold. It shows incredible, almost accidental long-term foresight for future accountability, ensuring legislators have to face the voters before pocketing a pay raise they gave themselves.
That's an amazing piece of constitutional trivia.
Mm.
And it really underlines the point about the document's adaptability, even across centuries.
It really does.
What's truly fascinating here, when you look at all these amendments together, from defining who can sue a state, to managing presidential transitions, to income taxes, even congressional salaries, is how the Constitution's framers, perhaps implicitly, anticipated the need for both fundamental rights protection and practical nuts and bolts adjustments over time. They ensured its relevance across centuries.
They built a framework that could handle both the profound and the practical.
Exactly. These amendments underscore the idea that the Constitution isn't some static relic collecting dust on a shelf. It's a dynamic tool for self-governance, continually refined by we the people, through the mechanisms the founders themselves created. It distinguishes the U.S. as a nation capable of self-correction and adaptation without needing to tear down its foundational structure every time a major change is needed.
Okay, as we start to wrap up this really profound journey through these foundational documents, it's time to bring this entire exploration together. So what does it all mean when we step back and reflect on the entirety of the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence?
Synthesizing the whole story.
Exactly. We started with the Declaration's breathtaking articulation of fundamental, unalienable rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. It set the moral foundation, the why, defining the empowered individual citizen as the cornerstone.
The ideals.
Then we explored the Constitution's ingenious establishment of a balanced, adaptable government, the how. Through its separation of powers among 3 branches, its intricate system of checks and balances, and its guarantee of a republican form of government.
The structure.
And finally, we witnessed the amendment's continuous refinement of justice and democracy over 230 years. From the Bill of Rights explicitly protecting individual liberties from the federal government, to the Reconstruction Amendments tackling slavery and equality, to the expansion of suffrage to women and younger citizens, and the adaptation of governmental mechanisms to meet new challenges.
The evolution.
The extraordinary foresight, the prescience of the Founding Fathers just shines through. They crafted documents that could not only launch a brand new kind of nation, but could also somehow endure and evolve through profound social, economic, and political transformations, civil war, industrialization, world wars, technological revolutions.
Their wisdom, their prudence is just as striking.
It really is. They clearly anticipated potential pitfalls, the dangers of tyranny, the risks of disunity, the problem of a rigid system unable to adapt, and they meticulously built in mechanisms to try and mitigate those risks. Separation of powers, checks and balances, federalism, and that crucial amendment process.
Safeguards built into the design.
These documents, working together, they've fostered a unique sense of American national identity, and they've provided the enduring framework for American citizens' rights and empowerment. That really powerfully distinguishes the U.S. and its long-standing commitment to constitutional self-governance on the world stage.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, these documents aren't just historical artifacts displayed under glass. They are living testaments to the power of ideas. Ideas about liberty, equality, and self-government. They represent the enduring pursuit of that more perfect union mentioned in the preamble.
A goal, not a finished state.
Precisely. They continuously call upon each generation, including ours, to engage with their principles, to debate their meaning, to strive to make them a reality for everyone. They've inspired movements for freedom and democracy around the world, proving that a government founded on the consent of the governed and committed to protecting individual rights can indeed stand the test of time.
But it requires ongoing effort.
It does. George Mason, one of the founders who actually didn't sign the Constitution because it initially lacked a Bill of Rights, gave us a timeless warning back in 1776. He said, "No free government, nor the blessings of liberty can be preserved to any people, but by a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles."
We have to keep revisiting the foundations.
That's our ongoing duty as citizens, isn't it?
Yeah.
To understand these principles, to protect them fiercely, and to ensure they continue to empower future generations. The responsibility doesn't end.
Well said. We explored the profound ideas contained within the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence. We've dug into their origins, traced their evolution, and considered their immense impact on who we are as a nation and as individual citizens. Now, here's a challenge for you, the listener. We challenge you to let these ideas enhance your own life, to truly embody the spirit of informed and empowered American citizen.
Make it personal.
Exactly. Think about a specific right from the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech maybe, or the right to due process, or think about a principle from the Declaration like equality or the consent of the governed that really resonates deeply with you personally. Ask yourself, how does understanding the origin and purpose of that right or principle influence your perspective or maybe even your actions today?
How does it connect to your life?
How can you actively participate in civic life, even in small ways, to uphold these principles? Maybe it's voting informedly, maybe it's engaging in respectful debate, maybe it's contacting your representatives, maybe it's volunteering in your community. Perhaps pick up a copy of these foundational documents yourself. They're readily available online or in inexpensive print editions, and just read through them. You might be surprised what you discover.
Engage directly with the text.
Take a moment to reflect on this, or maybe share your thoughts with a friend, a family member, or in your community group. How do these documents live for you? As we conclude this really profound journey, we sincerely hope this podcast has illuminated the incredible prescience and prudence embedded deep within our nation's founding documents, and importantly, how they were designed to empower you as an American citizen. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration.
Yes, thank you. And if you found this discussion valuable, if it sparked your curiosity, please follow, subscribe, and share the Plain Books podcast with others who you think might be curious and eager to dive deep into essential knowledge like this. And perhaps as you reflect on these remarkable documents, this raises one final important question for you to ponder. What is our ongoing responsibility, collectively and individually as citizens today, to truly understand, to actively protect, and to continually shape the legacy of these documents for the future, ensuring they remain vibrant and relevant for generations yet to come?